Welcome. Today is the 9th day of Cheshvan, the 10th of November, and we wanted to quickly jump over chapter 26. I missed one point that we need to go back to, very short, and then we'll continue with chapter 27. There's one more point here that he makes that's going to be very useful later on, and that is, we kept saying that there's, again, the saying from the Maggid, we mentioned it last time, that there's something special about the wisdom of the world of emanation. Chokhmah Datzilus is special. How is it special? Because he says that in every world, and starting with the world of emanation, the first vessel, as it were, the first place that the infinite revelation of Hashem can be contained is the wisdom. Okay? And this is a very big deal, because what it means in our lives is that without wisdom, which translates psychologically into a sense of self-nullification, there is no ability to reveal godliness. Meaning you have to have nullification. And just to give you an idea of what I mean by this, what in the world this means, like what does it mean that you're nullified? So the simplest meaning is that a person is dedicated to doing the mitzvos. That's the simplest meaning in the world for what self-nullification means. Because I get up in the morning and I have things I want to do. And I go, and if I'm a regular person, I go about my day and I have a list of things I want to do, and I do them. But when a Jew wakes up in the morning, he's completely committed to, first of all, doing what God tells him to do. And then afterwards, the more he's committed, the more everything else he does is also, in a sense, what God told him to do. Of course, not everything, because God doesn't tell me to go to work, and He doesn't tell me what work to do, and He doesn't tell me where to put my money. It doesn't. None of these things are dictated in the Torah. But the more I'm connected to God, the more I feel that when I'm doing these things, I'm performing something called B'chol Derachecha De'eu. In all your ways, you should know Him. And everything that I do in some way is a nullification to God. But obviously the first part of the day is complete nullification to God, because I'm going about God's business, as it were, not my own. Now, this is so different. I don't know how to say it. It's like we're a different species. Think about this. I was watching on Friday, somebody sent me a conversation, an interview with one of the smartest people in the world. And this guy is very intriguing. I don't remember his name, it doesn't matter. He doesn't work in academia, he doesn't do anything like that, but he's written many articles that have been published. And his take on the world is very interesting. So I have to say that I didn't have a lot of time to listen to it, but a lot of it resembles Chassidus. A lot of it does. Except for one thing. That this is like a cosmological picture of reality, and it sets everything up properly. The structure is right, the relationships are right, a lot of things are right, or they seem similar at least to what we understand in Hasidic thought. But the big issue is he has no concept of what we call Kabbalah Soul. He has no concept of what it means to take on the yoke of heaven. Absolutely no concept. I'm not talking about he doesn't get it exactly. He can't even think in those terms. He wakes up in the morning, the world is his. The world is his oyster, that's it. He doesn't feel at all that he is obligated to anything. Now, he's obligated to his mind. He came up with this theory, and he has a very interesting way of seeing things, and it could lead to morality, it could lead to good deeds, and so on and so forth. It's all very good. But none of it is dictated. Nothing. Now, this is a very big deal, that in Yiddishkeit there's first of all, there's the side of nullification. And because nullification is the beginning of wisdom, it's the essence of wisdom, everything else in the intellect that comes afterwards is dependent on it. In other words, I'll say it like this, that wisdom allows us to think independently. Without this self-nullification, which creates the vessel for godliness to dwell inside our lives, our thoughts would be completely void of godliness also. Meaning it starts from the wisdom and it goes into understanding and into knowledge, which is our consciousness and so on, and into our actions and into our feelings and our habits and so on and so forth. if you don't start from there, says the Magid, if you don't start with that self-nullification, everything else that you're doing is void of godliness. Doesn't matter how close to the truth you are.
You said independence.
Right, independence of thought. Yeah, because everything else,
everything
like I said, no. The only thing is dictated is the actions that I have to do.
Right.
But my thought afterwards becomes a vessel for godliness. What do I mean by godliness and thought? Godliness and thought is the ability to see the world for what it is. It's the ability to see things clearly.
Okay.
That requires independent thought. That you can't get from anywhere else. Understand? Otherwise,
free choice again, right?
Right,
Okay.
That's what allows me to have free choice.
Yeah.
That's what sustains the whole structure afterwards. The structure afterwards is up to me. Okay? It's up to me to do with it what I want and what I think I can. But it all starts from wisdom. So wisdom here has a special place, and he's going to, if I would have to say the next 6 chapters, in one sentence, it'll be about this idea of wisdom being the beginning of the revelation of Hashem, and what it means, and why there's a huge problem in the late Middle Ages with this statement. And we're going to see in the next chapters that this is the famous argument between the Maharal of Prague, and the Rambam. Huge argument. And the Rambam sees God in one way, and the Maharal completely negated that. He wasn't willing to listen to it at all. And the unification, or let's call it the synthesis of these two opinions together, hinges on this idea. And this came out in Chassidus. It started with the Baal Shem Tov. He doesn't bring the source. There's an earlier source than the one he brings here from the Magid. There's actually an earlier source that was written from the Magid's son. And the Magid's son said this about the Baal Shem Tov already. He says that the Baal Shem Tov already tried to synthesize his mission in our understanding of God was to synthesize the Kabbalists with the philosophers, meaning Maharal, who's a Kabbalist, with Rambam, who's the philosopher. And it all hinges on this statement that we'll read now. So it's on page 258. At the end of the 9th line. Ki dafka mi chokhmah. We already saw this. I'm just saying that this is the other major point in chapter 26 that I wanted to do quickly. Ki dafka mi chokhmah va'elach nishtalshelu asfirot bebchinat ilah ve'alul. 258. 9th line down, all the way to the end. Ki dafka mi chokhmah va'elach nishtalshelu asfirot bebchinat ilah ve'alul. From wisdom and down in the world of emanation, the sfirot are ilah ve'alul, meaning they're cause and effect. They see what's above them. אבל החוכמה עצמה מאין תימצא ולא בהשתלשלות אילה ועלול. But wisdom itself comes from nothingness. So in wisdom we have this yesh me'ayin again. The same thing that we thought until, again, he said it before, but it wasn't so stressed, that what we have in the 3 lower worlds, in Bia, Asira, creation, formation, and action, which is all yesh me'ayin because of the Malchus of Atzilus that comes down and has this gap that we talked about, the parsa, the curtain. It also exists in Chochmah, in Chochmah of Atzilus. Chochmah of Atzilus is also yesh me'ayin. כי אור אינסוף מרומם ונשגב מחוכמה עילה ונחשבת כעשייה גופנית אצלו יתברך. Because the infinite revelation of God is completely incommensurate with the wisdom of emanation, and wisdom it treats the infinite revelation of Hashem, it treats it like the way that we treat something that we made. So when I make a chair, let's say out of wood, I don't say the chair is an extension of me in any way, because it's not. That matter had to exist separately from me to be able to give it form. So that's the way that the infinite revelation of Hashem sees wisdom. It's as if it's something completely disconnected from it, and that's the crux of what it means to be something from nothing, or being from nothing. That there's a gap. Again, we said it's not that what's above is nothingness. It just says that what's above is incommensurate. It can't be grasped by the lower part. So wisdom of emanation cannot understand at all what it contains. And it contains the infinite revelation of Hashem. It's the same feeling that we have when we do a mitzvah and we're subscribing to our wisdom, our self-nullification. We do a mitzvah. We don't feel that there's anything special inside of us. We don't have that experience. No person feels when he's putting tefillin on, oh wow, my hand is now godly. There's no such feeling. Because there's a gap. There's a huge gap. You can't understand. Now, somebody would say, if you can't understand, what does that mean? Why? Because the point is not what you'll experience. The point is the nullification. That you understand. The nullification, the wisdom you understand. That you understand. And I'm now doing God's will. That you understand. But you can't understand what it means, and now the infinite is now dwelling inside of me. That you have no concept of.
A story like you said with the Melech Mizhensk and the Chida.
I said the question is whether he understands it or whether. So he is mechaven it. He thinks it. The question is, does he really feel that what he's doing, is this really Hashem's force or life force that's animating my finger? I'm moving my little finger. They see it. And they see, wow, his kavana, his intent now is kol atzmotai tomarna havaya mi kamocha. His intent now is this is all God's mercy on me, compassion on me. Okay, that's his nullification. The question is whether he feels that this is God's mercy. And if he feels it, is it really what he feels, or is it just a whim that he has? He wants to feel this way. The big question could be the Bayat Tzaddik. He does feel. I don't know, but a normal person for sure doesn't feel anything. And again, the point is not that I feel. The point is that I have this nullification. So even in him, I would say that the thing that's special is his intent, but he also has this nullification that what I'm doing now is God's will. In other words, you would say that he has bechol derachecha de'ehu, in every single act that he does, he feels that this is all what God is. God is with me. He knows God in all his actions. He's aware of godliness. Again, what do you mean? Yesterday's Tanya told us why we can't feel godliness. Because it said that since the destruction of the temple, the Shekhinah is in Golus. What does it mean that it's in Golus? It says there that it is enclosed in the tree of knowledge. It's enclosed in the klipa, in klipat noga. That's where Shekhinah is. Now it's like Shekhinah is wearing garments that we are not aware of. We don't recognize it. And so it's all these stories that somebody went somewhere and later he was told that was Eliyahu Navi who you just saw. It's like he's in disguise. You don't know where he is. You don't know where the Shekhinah is. It's in disguise in the physical world. It used to be that it was very clear when the temple was there. It was a sign that the Shekhinah was dwelling in us, and the person felt completely differently. It was a different feeling. Again, a lot of people, they encountered the Shekhinah then, like the Romans, let's say, and they didn't understand that it's just Shekhinah. They just understood this is the life force of the world. They felt the life force of the world. By the way, this is nothing. This is universal. If you go to China today, and they have a remnant of the Shekhinah, which I think is even closer than a lot of people say that chi is from the word chai. But I think that's from the word Shekhinah. What do I mean? That you go to them today, the Chinese, and they have their practices of Tai Chi or whatever it is from 3,000, 4,000 years ago. And they say, look, when you do this, it's moving the Chi in this way and in that way. So you ask someone, can you actually feel the Chi? So of course they say, of course we can feel. But when you ask them, really, nobody knows. We do the actions because this is what our ancestors told us to do. Now they're not religious actions. They're like, they learned how to manipulate the chi. They learned how to move it. When was that? That was back 2,000 years ago. They have a memory for 2,000 years ago that they say, apparently, this is what our ancestors used to do to move the Shekhinah around. They moved it around the body, they moved it here, they moved it there. People had a feeling of this everywhere in the world. It wasn't something that was just by Jews. But they interpreted it as, oh, this is a way to make yourself healthy. And we interpreted it as a way, this is how you connect to God. This is God's presence. So you have to connect to it. You're connecting to godliness. It means acts of loving kindness, it means prayer, it means service, it means all these things. Everybody interpreted differently based on who they were.
Are you saying the times of the first temple, the Shekhinah
Second temple also.
What?
And second temple even.
Even.
Okay.
That was also a force felt throughout the world.
Throughout the world, without question. Everybody felt it. It was interpreted differently by different cultures.
Yeah.
So some cultures were idolatrous.
Yeah, sure.
And then when the Shekhinah disappears, so they don't understand why in the second temple, like you said, there was much less of the Shekhinah. So we have the sages coming and saying, we don't understand how these kings in the time of the first temple, why they held by idolatry. Why did they worship these things? How did it make sense? So one of the kings of Menashe, he comes to, I think it's Papa, I don't remember who it was, and he comes and he tells them, you think I'm an imbecile, I'm a stupid idiot? If you were in my time, you would have raised your loins and girded your loins and run after these idols just as much. Why? Because they felt it. It wasn't a question. It wasn't like, people always ask, why is Avram not a schizophrenic? He hears voices. And he does what they tell him to do. He's crazy. What are you talking about? In their time, it was clear that this was God talking. It wasn't like now, if you hear voices, that's what Chazal say, that nevuah, as it were, this ability to hear godliness is today given to children, where it's a flight of fancy, it's an imagination, it's still not real, doesn't mean it's real, and to crazy people, because they hear also a voice. That's as close to the experience as you can understand. But now imagine that this experience is not it's not an imagination, it's not like a child, and it's not because you're crazy. It really is a real experience. There's no question God is talking to me. The question is what I'm going to do with it. For some people it was clearer, for some people it was vague. Again, depends on the person. Okay, so that's wrapping up the other point that will be very important later on for the continuation of the chapters here. Now, I just want to recall here, because I quickly reviewed everything again, he's not telling us how to daven, he's not telling us how to pray, he's telling us how to meditate, he's telling us how to contemplate when we're davening. That's the big deal. So, the whole section now, for a while, has been on Yehuda Ilah, Yehuda Tata, the higher unification and lower unification, which is the central subject of contemplation when a person is davening. And we said that that's the first pasuk of Shema and the second pasuk that's not a pasuk, which is not it. Okay, so we'll end here today, and God willing, we'll start chapter 27 tomorrow.